Guys about why Bondo cracks. And generally, if you do your body work the right way, I'm going to get out of this wind here. Your body filler should never crack. So if you're having cracking issues, we're going to kind of go over each one of those things and then show you what to look for and what causes it to crack. Now, first of all, I need to tell you there's several different types of body filler. There's Bondo brand body filler. There's a lot of different brands. You have USC, Evercoat, and then each one of those brands has different levels of quality. And typically, most of that's sandability, but part of that's adhesion, and a couple things to look at when you do your body work. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that I could show you right now what it looks like when it's cracking, and that I could dissect, because pretty much everything I use, I strip all the paint off and start fresh. So let's look at fillers. You have products like AG47, products like Z-Grip, and if you read the label on the product, some of the products will actually, like AG47 allows for some flexibility, and this is why I like this product, because it has some flexibility to it, where some other products are very much just very rigid. If you use the cheaper USC type Bondo, the base model, it has no flexibility at all. If it flexes a little bit, it's going to crack. So, but if you look at this one here, if you read the label, it'll actually adhere to factory finished paint, sanded, of course. But then again, I wouldn't put it on very thick over that. So, but those are just some of the things. I'm going to go over the details of each item, what causes cracking. Now, I've done repairs on this car. I did one right here. Obviously, it's not cracking. There was I welded in a section, filled it with filler, and it won't crack, I'm sure. And I've done that several times on many cars over the years. And every once in a while, you have some issue where something cracks. And usually, if you try and dissect it and figure out what it is, you usually can figure it out. So one of the things you have to do when you grind to bare metal, if you're using a bare metal product, the AG47 will go over a primer or E-coat or a epoxy primer. But those things definitely need to be roughed up and sanded. So keep that in mind. But most products require you to go over bare metal. If you read the data sheets and the label on each product, you should always read those things and see what it says. If it says here's to metal, if it adheres to plastic, those things, whatever, you want to make sure that you're in the specification of the product. So a lot of times what people do is they won't get all the paint off of the little corners and the low parts of the dent. And when there's a tiny bit of paint on there, that area is not adhering. And especially with the cheaper product, Bondo, it will probably crack because of that little tiny bit of paint there that you didn't get off. So if you need Bondo or filler, a production grade filler at least, and the only ones that don't do that are the ones that are specified in the product label and on the data sheets, that they are designed to go over paint. Most of them are not. So keep this in mind. If it says that it's designed to go over paint, then it may work, but most of them aren't. So it needs to be all bare metal. So if there's any bare metal, that is going to make the Bondo crack. Just one little spot this big of paint, it'll make it crack. Okay. So the next thing is sometimes I've seen these guys showing, their Bondo cracking, and they were doing a rust repair. Well, most rust repairs, let's say there was a rust repair right here. A lot of people think, well, if you just cut out, the rust, or you just, hammer it down in and fill it with Bondo, it's not going to crack. Well, what's happening usually is the rust is coming from the inside out. So where you can't see it, it's rusting from the inside. And even if you have it all bare metal, it will crack. Now, a lot of people think too, the other myth is, a lot of people think that if you put on Bondo thick, if I put it on more than 1/8 of an inch, it's going to crack. And that's not necessarily true. Okay. It all depends on where the Bondo is, where it's located, and how it was applied. Again, if it has any amount of paint underneath the Bondo, it's going to crack. The other thing is if there's any amount of stress on that area. So when you have high stress panels, let's say somewhere near the hinge here, you've got Bondo, and that door opens and flexes right there. You need to make sure that you're using a flexible filler. The AG47 has some flexibility in it. Now, some of the other products, I don't know exactly which ones. You can read the label, make sure that it says it has, the ability for flexibility. I've actually tested the AG47, and I put it on a flexible bumper, which it isn't recommended repair for, and my daughter actually scratched something, who knows what she scratched, I don't really want to know, right near the repair I did, and it didn't fail and it didn't crack. So I know that it handles some degree of flexibility, and I'm not going to say that that's the only product out there. There's tons of them, but you need to read those labels. You need to really check into that product. And you're talking about, a flexible filler usually is going to be not going to be, their 16 or 18 or $20 gallon product. It's probably going to be $40 or $50. AG47 is about 28 if you go to the right place. So if it's okay, so the other thing is, again, if it's over the paint and it's too thick over the paint. So let's say even if you're using like AG47 and you've got a deep repair right here and you're filling, a 1/2 inch or more thick, that could cause it to fail. If it was over bare metal and it was hearing better, it might still work out with even up to 1/2 inch thick. Now, I don't recommend, none of my repairs are 1/2 inch thick, but some of you guys, maybe you're doing a Mickey Mouse repair or something like that. Maybe you're just, fixing something temporarily and you're going to chuck the car in a few years and you put on Bondo that thick. And you wonder why it cracked, 6 months or a year later. Probably you would start with, if you started with really good bare metal and then you put the product over that and it's still cracked, then again, you look at the two things. You look at the stress, if there's stress on the panel, the flexibility of the product you were using, and make sure that it was properly adhering. Usually most Bondo cracks are because of adhesion. It's usually because the product was not adhering properly. The second reason is usually it's because of a flexibility issue, because most of the Bondos are not flexibility. They have no flexibility. When you're talking about Bondo, I'm talking about body filler, but I'm using the term Bondo because a lot of people use that term for body filler. So for instance, if I was doing a repair right around this hood handle, and I know that it's going to get stressed because every time you shut that hood, you're putting a little bit of stress right there, I would use a higher end product that'll handle that type of stuff, like the AG47, or I'm just using that one as an example again, to stop the cracking. So on this car, I actually did have a crack that happened right here, and it was because of stress, and it was overstressed, and I didn't use the AG47. Second time I repaired it with AG47, no issue, but I also figured out what the stress issue was, which was there's actually an inner support right here, and the inner support was somebody thought they knew better than the factory and actually welded the support to the hood. So every time you open the hood, there was always this movement, a little bit of movement there, and of course that caused the filler to crack. So and again, of course, I fixed it, and it's no big deal. It's all done now. But I'm just telling you guys, this does happen to some people. Even the best of people end up with some issue with cracking. Some guys say, "Oh, I never use Bondo because it always cracks." That's absolutely not true. Okay, it doesn't always crack. It only cracks when you didn't do it right. So when you didn't put it in when you put it in a place where the surface was, is constantly moving, and you didn't use a flexible product. Some of the U-pull products are flexible, and also the primer that you use. So sometimes so a guy might say, "Oh well, your Bondo cracked," but you find out that it's actually your paint. Your paint's cracking because you used a different kind of primer that didn't have any flexibility to it. Like if you use a product like polyester primer does not have a lot of flexibility, and if you have a panel that's constantly moving and rattling, then it could crack. So and people think, well, that's because the primer's no good. Well, you just used the primer in the wrong place. If you used a flexible primer like the urethane primer, then it wouldn't have done that. So those are a few of the issues. Number one, it's adhesion. It has to be over bare metal. Number two, it's a rust problem that occurs from the inside out, and you didn't properly remove the area, treat the rust behind it, and then do your panel repair. I mean, even fiberglass I've done years ago. I remember doing fiberglass repairs, and even fiberglass, I put Bondo over that, and I've had that not crack for 10 plus years. Cars that I did many years ago before I had welding equipment. I saw them many years later, and the area that I did the repair to did not crack. And that's because I treated the area around it from the rust, removed it, put in the, kitty hair repair stuff, and then actually did the Bondo repair. And we're talking about repairs that were this thick that didn't crack. So it's all about the stress of the panel, the having it bare metal, and then making sure that you got all the bad part of the panel out, and using a good product. If you're using the cheapest Bondo you can get and it's cracking, maybe just time to step up your game and get a little bit better product. It used to be years ago that the products were pretty much all the same. You could get any brand of Bondo. Back years ago, I used Bondo brand because it was available. I could get a good price on it, and all the other products were about the same. Well, now your sandability of your Bondos or your fillers is completely different. If you sand Z Grip, you sand USC AG47, you sand Evercoat Gold, Evercoat Rage. They sand completely different, and they shape completely different than the old school Bondo type stuff or Bondo brand. So I would highly suggest going to a better brand and making sure it's bare metal. And if it isn't bare metal, make sure that you sand the area behind it. So again, if you're using a product like the AG47 where it can be put over a regular factory E-coat, or if you're putting anything over that, epoxy, make sure you sand the living crap out of it. Make sure it's sanded and it's very, very rough. I don't always recommend going over epoxy primer unless you're using a product that specifies that it can go over that. And make sure you read the data sheets. If the data sheet says steel, aluminum, whatever, and it doesn't say E-coat paint, factory finish paint, and like AG47 even says wood. Okay, that product I know is going to stick pretty good because they give you a lot of very wide range of spec. If they don't have a really wide range of spec, don't expect to put it over epoxy primer and expect it not to crack. It might. You need to use the proper product for the job. So this is why Bondo cracks. A lot of times it gets a bad rap. People say that Bondo always cracks. It does not. I've used it for years. It will last. It can be done right. If it's done right, it's going to last. It's not going to, I had an issue on this, and it's because I didn't do the job right. I didn't remove the welds that I should have removed. I looked at them and I should have removed the welds. So my work cracked, but you see now, there's no more crack. It's gone. It was right here. So it's gone. There's no more, and it won't come back because it's done right. So if it's done right and you use filler, body filler, it's just as good as if you're doing hand finished metal work, because primer can crack. So a lot of people say, oh no, primer doesn't always crack. Well, depends on which one you're using. If you use a cheap garbage primer, it can crack. You know, if you're putting on the primer, like if you're using polyester filler, a polyester filler primer, or one of those other ones. I'm trying to think of. Evercoat has one. You guys have probably heard of it. It's sort of, and you spray it on. It's basically spray on Bondo. If you put that on, you start putting heat lamps on your work. That can crack too. It's and people think, oh, it's all Bondo. The Bondo is always the issue. No, it's not. There's a lot of different things that can cause cracking. So and don't immediately think, oh, it's because the Bondo. The Bondo cracked. Look at what you did, and look at or the person who did the repair. Take it off. See it's underneath. Is there little spots of paint in the low parts of the dent? Yeah, that's the person who did the job. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll hear more about this stuff.